This next one is really, really cool. I think you guys are going to be excited about this one. You might say this game is money. All right. Evan, come tell them about Bravo Ready.
Thank you, John. I'll take it. Hello, everybody. My name is Evan Ryer, and I'm the CEO and co-founder at Bravo Ready. Bravo Ready is a game studio that has two games, BR1 Infinite, Mini Arena, and a suite of other software. Tell you briefly about myself. I'm a two-time founder. Prior to this, I built and sold an esports tournament and wagering platform. Basically, it was a social website where you could bet on your performance in video games against your friends, and we would automatically track your stats through API and secure the payout. And I sold this to a public company called React Gaming Group on the TSX before stepping down and rolling all of my shares to build our game studio and our title BR1 Infinite, which is by far our most popular product. BR1 Infinite is the world's first risk-based shooter. It's a shooting game where you put up real capital to play. And for every player that you eliminate, you earn real money. So using our $1 game mode as the example, you pay $1 to spawn into the game. And for every player that you eliminate, you earn $1. And we take a service fee rake of all the earnings. It goes without saying, there is a free mode, there is a 10-cent game mode, 25-cent, $1, all the way to $10. We have a scalable revenue model that doesn't reinvent the wheel. We call it pay to spawn, kill to earn. Very similar to poker, you ante up to play. That's your pay to spawn. And when you knock out another opponent, that's the kill to earn, of which we take a percentage of those earnings. It's a very straightforward model, again, where that earn element comes as a product of what your opponent brings to the table. Now, additional to the kill to spawn, win to earn element of what we do, we also sell in-game characters, skins, and a season pass. As mentioned, this is a free-to-download game. You could play for free, and you can never put up capital if you don't want to. And in that free mode, play without a character, complete missions, and you'll actually earn a very small amount of capital, 10 cents, 25 cents, never enough to cash out, but enough to risk it for the biscuit in one of our paid game modes, potentially get hooked, and we could start to monetize you. For those much more competitive esports athletes that are playing their game for money, well, you're going to want to buy a character because ownership of a character reduces the underlying rate that we take and increases your ROI for the time that you spend in the game itself. Overall, we earn an average of 13.5 cents of every dollar that flows through our game. Now, given our player forecasting, we monetize our users at about $114 a piece annually, and at scale, it's an incredible revenue opportunity. And reflecting the table you see up here, very proud to say we just crossed the 60,000 user mark pre-registered to play the game. When it comes to user acquisition, we acquire users at about 67 cents a piece. For those of you in video games and software, this is substantially under industry standard. And really, we accomplish this through a handful of other organic and paid user acquisition methods that are really, it's like the vertical evolution of my former company. We started user acquisition really in January of this year, and the numbers speak for themselves. Now, all in, what are we doing next? We spent the past 2 years building this incredible game, and now we're going to market, and we're launching in Brazil first, in Portuguese. And there's two main reasons for that. One, the Brazil market is really ripe for the taking. And for those of you that are familiar with the Brazilian gamer market, year over year, it continues to double. Last year, they're the 5th largest in the world. And what's really exciting is the growing middle class. 43% of these users have a willingness to commit capital, payments in excess of $1 or $1 at the minimum. Similarly is their age demographic. And this is really important because we target gamers aged 25 to 35 with a disposable income. The reason for that is we acquire users like a video game company, and we monetize them like a gambling company. So I need users above the age of 18, 25 to 35, disposable income, and that willingness to commit that capital. Now, the second reason we're launching in Brazil, and the most important, is usually you only get one chance to launch a product. And for those of us that have seen poor product launches, and especially in the gaming space, you don't want to risk your brand. I get 2 chances. I'm launching the game in Brazil first to our Portuguese market. We get to A/B test our revenue model, ensure our tech infrastructure scales, and get a lot of user feedback. Assuming all goes well with this market validation, we turn back and we launch in US and Canada across North America in the regions of which we are compliant. and then we scale to Europe and Southeast Asia on a region-by-region basis. All in, last year, we raised 3.3 million. We did another 1.75 million revenue. Fairly strong. Our burn was much lower than anticipated, but we're going to change that as we scale to this 5th phase of our roadmap, which is our go-to-market. And that brings us to where we are today. We're here to raise another 3 million at a 30 million valuation so that we could scale the game, bring it to market in Brazil and across the world. To those of you who participate, you'd be joining a really strong cap table. Names like our lead 6-man ventures, like Crafton, the owners of PUBG, Justin Kahn, the co-founder of Twitch, and a handful of other great participants. All in, at Bravo Ready, really we look to build games and products that fundamentally redefine what it means to be a gamer, and I very much hope that you guys will join us on the journey. Let's run that gameplay clip. So, within the game, in addition to the risk-based game mode, we've instituted what we call an Infinite Royale. It's our proprietary game mode that has no start, no timer, no finish. Like a poker table, you could sit down and those guys may have been sitting at that table for hours on end. When you hop into our game, players may have been in the server for hours already. You hop in at your own pace, you begin eliminating players and earning, and when you die, you cash out those associated earnings. There are a lot of tactical movements that you'll see in the game itself, sliding, climbing, rolling. The gameplay is not a ripoff of Call of Duty or PUBG. It is a totally unique gameplay experience that gamers will have to discover on their own and, quote unquote, get good. Really hope that you guys like what you see here. Hope to see you in game.
I have so many questions.
Please.
First of all, what percentage of the 65,000 are based in Brazil?
There's about 60% of the users that we recently registered that are in Brazil right now.
What platforms?
It's a PC-based game. Okay. So our game exists. It's a Unity game on PC.
Distributed on your own website or through Steam?
And we distribute it through a launcher that you download at our website, BR1game.com.
And how do you deal with player liquidity?
In terms of user retention?
In terms of number of users to actually get a session that would actually be
the
worthwhile.
Hardest part about building a game, and again, it's like a casino model. If you have too many tables and too few players, they're not going to pair. And that's going to result in a very poor user experience. So as we built the game, we started with only 3 servers. And we capped those servers at a very low level of participation, thus ensuring as users show up, there is always somebody there to play with. Before we got to this point, we worked with in excess of 70 gamer guilds, which are like esports organizations, and they embedded their entire communities into the game itself so that we would have this active user base to sustain the users we were bringing on.
PUBG did the same thing, and then eventually they had to go to bots. What's your kind of midlife plan?
When it comes to scaling a game, you don't want to bite off more than you could chew. And we're lucky we get to capitalize on the FOMO of participation. If we want to have all 60,000 users playing the game at once and we have concerns of them dying out, we can restrict the total amount of servers to a small handful, thus ensuring they are always at capacity. And you guys may show up and it'll say, sorry, the server is full. But that's much better than you showing up and having nobody to play with.
And to cash out, that's a few minutes of waiting around with no action?
When it comes to cashing out, this is a true esport. And I'm sure there'll be a handful of questions about anti-cheat and how we address that. One of those things is internal controls. When you accrue capital within the game itself, you have to process the withdrawal. It's a 12 to 24-hour period of which we evaluate your associated scores through different embedded tooling that we have.
And sorry, one last question. DraftKings and fantasy sports companies, you know, they acquire consumers, but the fantasy piece is actually not what they drive the consumer to. They drive the consumer to social casino because their take rate is much higher. So are you concerned that 13.5 or 13.5 cents is too low given all the live services you're going to have to invest in over time?
13.5 cents is a very high number, especially if you're a user. Imagine we're taking about 13.5 cents of every dollar of your associated earnings. This average comes as a product between the players who play for free and those who own characters paired with those that die by mistake in the game itself. If you die by mistake, obviously we eat that associated earnings that the player that killed you would have gotten. Similarly, if you own a character, we take a reduced rate. If you don't own a character and you play in those paid game modes, we take the max rate, which is much closer to 25%.
So you mentioned anti-cheat, and so I wanted to ask you a question there. So we're very lucky to have back the creators of Valorant as part of the A16Z Games Fund. When I hear from them about the enormous investment that it took to actually sort of reduce cheating, high-tech servers, integrating the software at the kernel level, forcing users to reboot, on some of the updates, like all the things that they've done. It's just incredible. And so, talk about the investment that you've made there. Are you rolling something in-house or using one of the external anti-cheat libraries? How are you handling that?
I am very lucky that this is like one of my core niches. This previous company I built, this esports tournament and wagering platform, the way it worked is through API. I would pull user stats, and through these user stats, we built the anti-cheat tool that, again, we use as a vertical evolution of such. We use the most widely available software. Shout out Unity for helping us every step of the way. We use data analytic tools, and there's a social element. And I want to talk about the second and third points. When it comes to analytics, we take user stats and we create what we call a future predicted score. Similarly, I know how much damage you should commit per second in your future games, how fast you should travel the map. And if a user performs outside of 1 or 2 standard deviations of what we expect, we flag it. Now, I cannot assess with certainty that you cheated, but I know that there's something wrong with the data. I'll flag that score, and I won't count it. Second to that is the social approach. When you're cheating in a video game, or when you're affected by cheating, it's a terrible experience. It's what leads people to quit. We reach out to players who may have been affected by cheating, and we give them capital. You log into the game, and you'll see, John, we're letting you know that yesterday you were affected by a fly hack, and for that reason, we've added 50 cents to your account. And just notifying the user creates this strong sense of like ethical engagement with the community, which we've seen enables them to stay behind and maintain that user retention.
No, thank you. And then one last question. How do you think a little bit about so your CAC number is very impressive, but I'm skeptical that will hold as you scale it, and obviously it's probably a blended number anyway. One of the dynamics that DraftKings faces is they have really high skill players, the Sharks, and then they're constantly acquiring low skill, high churn users. And as a result of that, as you may have followed, it's really, really hard for them to actually grow their MAU numbers over time. And the cost of acquisition, as they've churned through kind of the entire base of poker players, is getting higher and higher, which is why they have various issues. Talk about that dynamic in your thing, because it sort of feels like you've built a high skill game, but one where maybe a small percentage of users are able to dominate. And you may end up facing the same dynamic. So to talk about that.
When it comes to how players choose to separate themselves in this game, similar to a casino, it boils down to their level of risk averseness. The level of excitement that you may get for spawning into a 10-cent game may be the equivalent excitement that somebody gets for $1. So instead of using an ELO system, we actually let players separate themselves by their willingness to commit capital and their associated risk. And additionally, there's the element of user retention. If you look at our player forecasting model, it's based on a very conservative twice per week gameplay session. And if you look at a casino similarly, yes, they prefer the 1% of people who show up and play all day, but the real money is made by all of us who show up once or twice a year. And in aggregate, that provides substantial revenue to float the business, and we function in the same capacity. I'll say, everybody, I really appreciate you listening to our presentation today. If you have any other questions, please find me in the crowd.
All right, thank you, Evan. Wow. Very cool. All right, who wants to go? Who wants to go? I got $1 right here.